Donald's tariffs continue to hurt the U.S. economy and alienate countries around the world, including our allies. But his tariff games aren't quite going as he planned, with continuing unexpected consequences. Many countries have implemented retaliatory tariffs of their own, and their citizens have protested Americans' betrayal by boycotting U.S. goods, services, and travel. When it comes to putting their money where their mouths are, Canadians are leading the way. American alcohol distributors and distilleries are taking a particularly hard hit. Last week, CNBC spoke to Joe Malioco, president of Michter's Distillery and Chatham Imports, who had this to say about Canada's current attitude about American produced alcohol.
The big problem for a lot of producers basically is Canada. And, you use the word boycott. It really isn't a boycott. It's not a consumer boycott in Canada. It's a ban. It's a governmental ban in 8 of the provinces, including, really populous, really big ones like Quebec, like British Columbia, like Ontario. So 8 provinces banned American alcohol or removed it from the shelves. Things are changing a little bit up there. 2 of the provinces, Alberta and Saskatchewan, are now open to having American liquor sales, but that's going to be with a 25% tariff, which is pretty hefty. For example, in Saskatchewan, a bottle of our entry-level US1 bourbon, Michter's US1 bourbon, is going to go from $108 to $133. That's a $25 Canadian increase all at once. So I can't imagine that's not going to affect volume.
That doesn't seem like a particularly efficient way to put America first by making it impossible for American businesses to sell their goods in other countries. But apparently, Donald either doesn't care or doesn't actually know the impact his insane economic policies are having on American businesses. Last week, the Conversation.com reported that a Kantar survey of 1,500 people found that out of the UK, France, and Canada, Canadians are currently most likely to boycott the US. These findings are supported by Statistics Canada, which reported last Friday that Canadian travel to the US is down significantly from last year. In 2024, approximately 20.4 million Canadians visited the US, generating roughly $20.5 billion in revenue and supporting approximately 140,000 American jobs. By contrast, the number of Canadians visiting this country in 2025 is down a massive 28.7%. The tourism industry in America makes up about 3% of our gross domestic product. That number obviously is on the decline, and if things continue going the way they are going, that decline will continue. The self-inflicted pain caused by Donald's tariffs extends even further. The 50% tariffs the United States levied against India went into effect this week. Donald's stated rationale for doubling the already steep 25% tariff rate is to punish India because of its purchase of Russian oil and its historically high trade barriers. But there's likely more to it than that, which I'll get to in a minute. Meanwhile, Indian businesses and employees will suffer due to the likely huge drop off in goods being ordered by American retailers. But the cost of those tariffs will, of course, be handed off to the American consumer, because that's how these things work. Tariffs are taxes on goods paid by the people buying those goods. This is a very simple principle. It is so simple, in fact, that even Donald Trump should be able to understand it. Yeah, but he doesn't. So what does that tell you about him? Let's watch what an Indian leather exporter had to say in a report released by the Associated Press last week.
And they must understand that this tariff is not going to burden us. They are going to burden their own customers, own consumers. We are looking at the Russian market also again. We have the South America also. It's a huge market. They have to understand nobody is going to surrender in any blackmailing. Nobody can going to surrender.
Now, it actually will hurt Indian businesses initially, unless Indian businesses find ways to open other markets for their goods, which is exactly what we are incentivizing them to do. So American consumers will be punished, but Indian businesses will find other ways to make up for the deficits being imposed on them by America's punitive economic policy. On Wednesday, the BBC spoke to an expert on India's economy who explained how these tariffs will not affect their economy the way Donald thinks it will. Take a look.
The overall impact on India's vast economy will be limited.
Well, the trouble is that a lot of the discussion has been very alarmist based on absolute numbers, because India exports about $70 to $80 billion worth of merchandise. But honestly, when you look at it, it's about 2 to 3% of India's GDP is the merchandise exports to the US. And of that, some very significant exports have actually been exempted. So medicines have been exempted, and services, which is the big one, have been exempted as well.
50% tariff, that sounds like a really big deal, right? And Donald likes to brag about it to make it sound like he's a tough guy. But as that expert just told us, there are so many exemptions, something like 2 to 3% of India's exports are going to be affected, which is not going to take a significant toll on India's economy. Although that doesn't mean that there aren't still tensions being created by Donald with India. In fact, India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, has used these tensions with the United States to bolster his political standing in his country. The New York Times reported what Modi had to say about these tariffs. Quote, "No matter how much pressure is put on us, India will prevail. Defending the common man from politics driven by economic self-interest will be Modi's first priority," he promised. It was implicit that India's economic dependence on the United States, with which it participated in more than $200 billion worth of trade in goods and services last year, would be curtailed, maybe in favor of China, Japan, Europe, or other partners, unquote. Also implicit in Modi's response to the punitive tariffs is perhaps the real reason for the price hike. Modi has not sucked up to Donald enough. So Donald is going after the leaders of countries who do not show him sufficient fealty. That is not putting American economic interest first. Also, for the most part, his tariffs seem to be ineffectual when trying to address the issues Donald claims exist with our trading partners. Instead, they are only hurting our economy and our consumers while weakening our position as a global economic power. Because here's the thing. All of these countries Donald is threatening, and all of these countries on whose goods Donald is imposing tariffs, are finding other trade partners to the exclusion of the United States. And the main benefit of all of this? Our main trade competitor, China. Meanwhile, Americans have found a creative way to dodge these tariffs. What is the best way to avoid paying unnecessary taxes on imported goods? Don't import them. Go straight to the source. On Wednesday, CNBC reported that many wealthy Americans are traveling to Europe and buying expensive goods there to avoid paying tariffs on them here at home. Swiss watches, French and Italian fashion items, and so on. Now, CNN did some of the math on this. They found that a Rolex costing $11,300 in Switzerland could end up costing $15,707 if purchased here, after the 39% tariff Donald levied on the country. So it could well be cheaper to fly to Switzerland and buy a couple of watches there than it would be to buy the same watch here. But that's just rich people. How does the average American family get around the negative fallout of this unnecessary and devastating trade war that Donald started unilaterally months ago? They can't. So that's what we need to remember. There are no ways around the increase in prices if you are somebody living paycheck to paycheck. And that should be one of the legacies of Donald Trump that we never allow people to forget. please take a second and like and share this video. Be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.